When I first ventured back into painting yesterday after a couple of days off, I saw this little sketch that I did of some trees on the shore. And I just decided to myself that I really wanted to elevate it a little bit more. So in today's video, I'm going to do that, and I'll show you. And hopefully it'll turn out a little nicer even. Now, the first thing I'm going to note here, because I know people are going to ask, it happens over the last 15 or so years that I've been painting, is why paint oils on a cardstock. And the reason is simple. Any surface that you paint an oil painting on, it should get some kind of a seal first, like a quick gesso. But on paper stocks like card or construction paper or anything like that, it's a different kind of a vibe when you paint right onto the bare material. I like to refer to one of Canada's most famous artists, the late and quite great Emily Carr, and how she used to work in a little shed out in the woods. Not much of a shed, but she used to paint some of her masterpieces on newspaper. It's just simple newspaper from the corner newspaper stand. And I presume for her, given the history lesson, that she did it for economic reasons more than anything, but also because she was located way out in the woods, and it wasn't that easy to head into her local art supply store, which back in those days would have been few and far between anyway. But a number of artists over the years have worked with materials other than canvas, and I refer to paintings like the Mona Lisa, painted on panels of wood, and other paintings like Tom Thompson's paintings that when he traveled, he didn't have any time to go back to the art supply store, so he used up the canvas boards that he brought from the city and the canvases, but then he started breaking apart milk cartons or wooden milk crates and using them to paint some of his most cherished masterpieces on. And I suppose, the rule that can be gleaned from that is, a painting is still a painting regardless of what it's painted on. But when I work on cardstock or on paper with oils, the oils naturally kind of bleed into the paper or the cardstock, and you'll see that kind of a yellow edge around the exterior of the painting. Well, that's where the linseed oil in paint has seeped into the material and yellowed it somewhat. But what I'm really trying to get to here is that the texture and the depth that oil paints take when you render them on paper or cardstocks is quite different from canvas or wood or any other particularly harder surface. In fact, the colors for me are richer. They're deeper, they're darker in some zones, they're a little more colorful in other zones. And the paper stock, the cardstock, it has its own personality. And I discovered that maybe 10, 11 years ago when just out on a trip, I happened to have an old piece of cardstock that I bundled my brushes in, and I think I rendered a quick little painting on it. And as the days went by, I just loved the way it was maturing. I loved the way it was vibing with the materials, and it just, I fell in love with it. So I haven't done that many in cardstock, but this one is that, and I hope you like it. I'm quite pleased with it. Now, looking at what we're doing here, I started this painting with a very simple sketch outline, some trees on some rocks, And then I came back to it one day and I added the little speckles in the water. And I left the sky quite flat and plain looking. I think that that was okay at the time, but what happens when artists live with a painting for a period of time is they begin to see it through objective eyes. They begin to see it for what it could be. And the beautiful thing about being an artist and painting paintings, or for that matter, sculptings, or anybody, craftsmen who make furniture or whatever, you know, when we live with our creative process, we we have this luxury of being able to tweak things and to fine tune things and to take it to a higher level. And I like to say, as long as a painting hasn't been sold, it's fair game. And Lord knows in my studio, I've got paintings hanging around here that, well, at one time I might have called them done, but they are beckoning every day I look at them for a little bit of this or a little bit of that. And so, such is the case with this beautiful little 8-inch by 10-inch sketch. Now you can see that I'm adding a lighter, like a cerulean blue mixed with titanium white on top of what was a ultramarine blue water. And I'm using the same cerulean mixed with a little bit of black just to give us a gray tone, a little bit of titanium white, quite a bit actually, to give me the lighter tones in the sky. But I'm layering on top of that neutral gray sky that was there to begin with. And you may have noticed, depending on your discipline as an artist, I know many of you maybe probably are meticulous, detailed, fine artists, for which I do not consider myself in that ballpark. I look at artists who paint real life, photographic, detailed paintings, and I'm in admiration. Absolutely, I almost kiss the ground that you walk on for the kind of patience and steadiness that you have. But I learned a long time ago that I am not that artist, and I just came to grips with it and accepted who I am. I'm a loose, more painterly type, more impressionist style, and it just suits me fine to do things the way I do them. So here we have a fine example of that really loose, broad stroke style of painting. Now, I am lightening up the sky in the upper portion because I felt like it was a little too dark to begin with. And, you know, with everything that's going on in the world these days, who needs dark? I mean, I've got my share of dark paintings and, well, I have fun with that. I really do have fun with that because I like to explore moods. And I may or may not be in a dark mood when I paint a dark painting. I've painted very dark and ominous looking paintings while sipping tea and having apple pie and feeling great. But it's the exploration of moods and feelings that I really like to employ in the paintings that I do. But in this particular case, I just really feel of late that there's been so much going on in the world. And, just recently in Toronto at Pearson Airport, we had that incredible plane crash that, it just landed and took a wing off and flipped over, but miraculously, 76 passengers walked away from that plane, as well as the crew and the flight crew and pilots. Wow, what an incredible story that is. And so close to home, not far from where I live. But I digress. There's that kind of news going on in the world, and some of it does not end as well. And we're bombarded with that these days. I mean, just scroll through your social media for 5 minutes, and you'll be hit with the majority of negativity. And so I'm approaching this painting with a feeling that I'd like to lighten it up a little bit. I'd like to give it a little more of a happier zone. and a happier vibe and a feeling of a little more optimism. And that's why I'm using the colors that I'm using. And just to backtrack here, I'll just remind you that that's cerulean blue in the water with titanium white mixed into it to give us those nice, cool, kind of refreshing late summer, autumn colors. That is olive green that I'm working on right now, that I'm tapping into the tree line on the other side of the lake. And a little bit of titanium mixed into it as well, but I'm painting that right over top of what you can see was a gray, a kind of a Payne's gray tree line. I don't know what I was thinking when I painted that, and I think maybe it was going to go in the direction of a more ominous colored painting, but no, not anymore. We've had enough of that, so let's lighten it up and let's cheer it up a little bit here. And olive green is just the right color for forests. And here I'm just going to add, I just tapped a little bit of ultramarine blue into the same green and made it just a tad darker. And I'll use that for a foreground line of trees along the base of that shoreline over there. You know, you gotta do little hints of perspective like that. Of course, the viewer's eye can assume a lot of things. I like to say that the viewer's eye can finish a painting for most any artist. But it helps if we do a few little things along the way to just kind of assist, just to little nudge the imagination along a little bit. And of course, as I outlined earlier, I'm not a fine detail artist. I'm really a very loose style artist. So I'm not really focused on the specific little twigs and branches and things. I leave that up to your imagination, but I am definitely suggesting to your brain, to your mind's eye, the hints of color, the hints of detail that are happening, and just let your brain finish the painting in your own mind. And these are birch trees that I'm just tapping some color into that are in the foreground, but I'm working them against the very light teal that is in the trees off in the distance. And it just works to harmonize the painting, to blend things a little bit. Those greens in the background and the teal and rust in the foreground just kind of makes the choir all sing their four parts beautifully. Now, the foreground, as you can see in the rocks and the trees, like immediately in front of us, are quite dramatically different in color. And that is to really emphasize the warmth and the pleasantness of the day. The rocks, the fallen trees, the logs, and we'll make those colors a little bit more punchy just by using some dark. I've got some ultramarine blue mixed with some azo orange, and it gives me on the screen it looks like a little bit more like black, but it's actually kind of a dark, deep brown. And these are the shadows in between the rocks and the fallen logs and what have you. That gives a little bit of dimension and perspective, and it takes away some of the monotonous overtones that were currently, previously, I should say, present throughout the foreground of this painting. Now we're starting to get those, feelings of detail, those sense of 3D, that, some things are here, some things are over there, and some things are way over there. That's what we're accomplishing here. And of course, I'm going to bring some of that teal that I used up in the trees to the left. I'm going to drop that in and just sort of hint some grass, some greenery amongst the rocks. It's a late season painting, so most of the green has started to fade or to move into its winter slumber. But there's still some visible, and it grows between the rocks, and it nourishes the trees, the roots of the trees, and it retains the moisture. And so That's the natural purposes of it, but in a painting like this, I'm using those greens to harmonize the painting with the greens in the background. Now, my big twisty tree here on the right is a little forward, a little bit punchy. And I'm not pleased with that, so I want to soften the blow a little bit. I just want to blend it a little more into the background. And so what I'm doing here is I'm taking a tan, which is my Azo orange mixed with titanium white and a little bit of ultramarine blue. And it gives me a tan color. It looks a little bit too much like white in the video, but in reality it's a rusty tan color. And what's happening is it makes the tree have light and dark zones. And that gives us the sense that light from the sky is hitting the tree in variable strength. And that gives it a more, again, three-dimensional kind of a vibe. I'm taking some of that teal that was used over on the left-hand side, and I'm going to tap that into the hillside over on the other side of the lake. That, again, increases that sort of a three-dimensional, some parts of the shoreline are closer to us and some parts are farther. But also the clouds in the sky suggest that the light is unevenly spread out on the landscape. And so have some light zones, have some dark zones, and I'll tap some of that right into the foreground here as well. You see? Now it's all starting to come together. And what's one of the fun things you can do when you watch a video like this is when you get finished, you can quickly scroll back to the beginning and just look at what the painting looked like before. And then scroll forward to the end and look at it after. And it's just I'm the artist and I'm the creator of this painting, but it's a real pleasure for me even to look back and see where it came from, where it is now, and it just feels like progress. But before and afters are pretty much a learning tool. They help us to appreciate what layering can do for a painting. And that's really what this session is mostly about, is the layering and the building up. Now, I'm feeling pretty good about this painting. And you can see I'm going to just add a few little white caps in the water there. I call those happy white caps. Those are the little touches that just kind of take a painting from, just being there to actually having a little bit of joy. I think of the seagulls that are flying around and they watch those white caps because, the little fish that are visible. And anyway, that's another thing. Little highlights here and there. And I'm just going to go back over some of those darks that I applied earlier and make them not quite as dense. By painting a little bit of light tones into them, I can just sort of blend them a little bit. So that way they're not so contrasted, not so sharply interrupting our harmonious view of the whole painting. I'm adding Azo orange and a little bit of, again, a little bit of titanium white, and I mixed a little black into it as well, but it's really a very rusty kind of Azo orange, and as you can see there, it's starting to blend some of those otherwise distracting zones. I'm just going to really let the thick paint just kind of lay in there. When you have a Robert McAfee painting in your hands, after you've purchased it and it's been shipped to you and you open the package and hold it in your hands, the first thing that will hit you is the thickness, the high texture of the paint. And that's what I specialize in, that kind of painterly texture. Listen, I want to thank you for joining me and painting along with me in your mind as I work here for you on YouTube. And if you've enjoyed this, I really encourage you to hit the like and subscribe and put a little comment below. Just say hello or let me know where you were watching from. I'd love to know what part of the world viewers are watching from. And also, that way, it helps for others to be notified and know that, hey, I'm not the only one watching this. Someone else is watching too. So thank you. And if this painting or any of my other paintings at robertmcafee.com interest you, well, follow the contact information at the end of this video, and I'll be happy to set you up. Thanks for watching, everybody.